Welcome back to my loading bench. Now today I want to talk about case trimming. So for years and years, I've been running a conventional case trimmer, if it were, the old hand style crank. Does a fantastic job, gives me my brass exactly how I want it. But it's a little slow, it's a little cumbersome. It's one of those things I just don't look forward to in the reloading process. It's probably my least favorite. So I've been exploring some ideas. There's a lot of things today out to make this process better. I'm not the only one that's experiencing this. So I decided to try something. Now, the cost of this was very low. My expectations were actually very low. The result, however, very surprising, and I'm very happy with. And what I'm talking about is going to a drill. That's better than the hand crank idea, and using a cutter with a sizing pin built into it to establish my length. Neat idea. It's a little confusing the way that this is sold. The way its assembly is a little bit awkward. Once you see it once, it makes sense, but there's no directions really on how to do this to come out with the exact length that you're looking for. So what I decided to do is shoot a little video here taking us through this idea and looking at the results compared to this one. Let's dig into it.
To make what I'm going to show you, you can't actually buy this as a set. You've got to buy two different things and put them together. The one on the left is the case length gauge and shell holder. The one on the right is the cutter and lock stud. And you're going to have to swap parts from the two to make the two halves that you need. So the one on the right that I'm screwing together there is your lock stud from one piece and your shell holder from the other, and that's going to be caliber specific. This is 223. So you just take your shell holder out of package left and screw it onto that stud package right, and then you can slip your case in there, tighten it down, and it'll hold it quite nicely. It'll chuck into your drill. And then the one on the left is the cutter out of the package on the right, and the case length gauge out of the package on the left. You're going to screw that in, but when you screw that in finger tight, it won't be tight enough. You can see I'm chucking it into a soft jawed vise to screw that the rest of the way in. I've heard folks using channel locks and some tape, whatever, but you're going to have to mechanically turn that a whole lot tighter to get it right. So here I'm going to demonstrate using this thing. You can see this particular gauge on 223, by the way. Our trim to is 1760, and we can trim that all the way down to 1730, although the normal trim length is 1750. So I've chucked this into this drill. You've got to be careful the way you do that so that it stays centered. As you turn it, it has a tendency to walk out just a little bit, so you're going to want to push and hold that in. And you can see in this case that I've got this guy set real close, 1749 and a half. 1750 was my target, and I'm happy with that. I'm well within that 1730. Here's a close-up of it. You can see how quickly that cuts right through there. I do have this drill on high speed. That's why it's ripping through there so quickly. So then the next piece is how fast do I go? Do I have to measure this every time? No. Once you're confident, measure a few cases and see that they're coming out exactly the same. It will just stop cutting. Is the idea. When you stop cutting, you'll feel that. You won't see the shavings come off. Then you just run them. And in this example that I'm showing here, I'm running these at something like 15 seconds a piece, roughly. So I'm cutting almost 4 of them a minute. Pretty close to that, including dropping them in the shell holder and pulling out a new case. It's pretty fast, around 15 seconds. So that's my Lee system. Let's take a look at the more conventional. This one particular one's a Lyman cutter. I'm going to set this up, slide it over a little bit, get a little better camera angle, and we'll make a case with that and get a comparison. All right. Once again, I'm measuring this just for your benefit here on the video. I've done this enough times. A couple schools of thought. Should I trim every one? Should I trim every one that's over 1760? In my experience, it's just easier to trim every one. I've mentioned I'm not a huge fan of trimming cases, so that's one of the reasons I wanted to get a faster process. I like to bring them all to exactly the same length each time I fire. But it's range brass I'm picking up, and I'm just shooting paper at 100 yards here for fun. It's not competition. So would it be okay to have some a little short, a little long? Yeah, absolutely. Probably won't make any difference at all. But for best practice, and when you get into some precision shooting, you are going to want those to be exactly the same. So you can see the process. It's not difficult. Obviously, it's significantly slower, and that's really the point here. Okay, so those are our two systems. Now, pros and cons of each. The old style system, biggest challenge here is changing calibers. It takes a little while to get this adjusted to give me that length exactly where I want it. I've got to tinker with the end piece. The amount of pressure that I apply pushing in has to be consistent. You can't see that in the video. I'm not just turning the handle. I am pushing in while I do that and really observing that brass. That's probably the worst side of this, other than the manual effort. The chamfering and deburring on this is, of course, done by hand. And you saw in the video, it requires a little more time because I'm turning it very slow. Very precise. I can feel it. I can see it very, very cleanly. But it is definitely slower, right? And requires a significant amount of effort. This system's actually been around for a while. It's just new to me. I haven't messed with it. So what's the downside for this? Really, to me, the biggest downside was when I was setting this up, getting that length exactly right, getting it turned in so that it gave me the final dimension that I was looking for. Now, this is actually my second one. I bought the first one and turned it in a little bit too far, and then made the mistake of trying to back it out a little bit. It worked, and I got my length where I wanted it, but as I started running cases, it loosened up and turned out a little bit more, and I lost my consistency. So I purchased this one with the intent of setting it one time and leaving it in the device. I don't believe that's how it was intended to be sold. I think they intended for you to be able to change your gauge per caliber and use the same cutter. My recommendation would be you don't do that. The cutter is very inexpensive. Buy a specific cutter for each one. As you set this up, take your case out and measure it and set it up a little long and continuously turn it in until you get to where you want. Don't loosen it. If you do that, it stays very, very tight and it's very consistent and reliable. So those would be the two things that I would say the downsides of this are. It's not adjustable once you set it. That's a plus. Also, once it's set, forget it. It just works. We saw how rapid it was. It was very, very fast on my chamfering and deburring, which I would use this for that anyway. Now that I've got it, no longer going to do that by hand. It just takes too long, wears out your fingers. That is so fast. So I will be purchasing one of these for each of my calibers that I'm loading. There's no question this is the route that I'm going to go. When I've got a few oddball cases, I'm loading some 735 Carcano, for instance, shoot about 50 of those every 2 years. Probably do that on the conventional trimmer. There's, probably not going to be able to find a case gauge for 735, to be honest. So probably can modify 308 or something like that by trimming the tip a little bit. And that's the other thing you can do if you turn it all the way in and you run out of distance, just very gently file that in until it's just right. That was another concern with a different one that I was setting up with a friend. So the precision on it being turned in really is its weak spot, in my opinion, but it's not overcomable. Once you have it set up, it's set up for forever. All right, thank you very much. If you enjoyed this, I do have a channel, so be sure to subscribe and check out my other videos.